There's an incident I had forgotten for a long time, until my mother brought it up a while ago, and I recalled those bizarre experiences from my childhood. The story goes like this. When I was a child, there was a period when my house was being renovated, so it was arranged for me to stay at my grandmother's house in the countryside. At that time, I met an older girl there who was very nice to me, and she would always secretly take me to various places to play. The weird thing was, those places could only be reached when she took me. If I followed the original path by myself, I would find that the roads that should have existed in my memory were completely gone, and I couldn't find them no matter how hard I searched. For example, I remember once she took me into a thicket. It was very bizarre. There was absolutely nothing inside except for a single, dilapidated door standing there by itself. After she opened the door, inside was a place filled with toys. I played there for a long time and had a lot of fun. The next day, I wanted to go play there again, so I followed the same path by myself. Halfway there, I realized the fork in the road leading to that door simply did not exist. I just assumed I had taken the wrong path, but this kind of thing happened several times, which was truly unbelievable. I remember I really liked that older girl at the time, so I told her that we should always play together. Strangely enough, when I mentioned her to the other children I played with, they all told me there was no such person in the village. This continued until one day, my grandmother seemed to notice something unusual about me, though I don't remember exactly what it was. Under the arrangement of my mother and the adults in the village, I was taken to a highly popular temple near my grandmother's house. The people there told me to stay under the altar table and not come out. I obediently did so, until approaching dusk when an adult brought me out, told me everything was fine, and then my grandmother took me home. After this incident, I never saw that older girl again. Fast forward to when I was 13. One day, my mother suddenly took me back to my grandmother's house in the countryside. When we arrived, my grandmother had already prepared a lot of things. She then asked my mother to take me home and distribute those things to the neighbors living nearby. After returning home, my mother followed my grandmother's instructions and took me around to deliver those items to the neighbors. When we delivered to a particular elderly neighbor lady, who was from the same village as my grandmother and understood the local customs well, she looked a bit surprised when she saw the items and asked how old I was. After my mother replied that I was 13, the old lady said that these things were supposed to be given only for a wedding, so why were they being given away when I was only 13? Although I don't fully understand what exactly happened from beginning to end, it was a very strange experience. Perhaps I was genuinely arranged to marry some kind of entity? But even now, I still have no idea what I married back then, and my romantic relationships as an adult have never gone smoothly. To this day, I am still single. This next part is my father's personal experience from his time in the military. The following story will be told from his perspective. Around the year 1981, I was lucky enough to be one of the only two people in our village to be drafted into the Air Force. Of course, I wasn't always that lucky. After completing mine on main as commissioned officer training on the main island, my original unit was disbanded, and I was subsequently transferred to Kinmen. Compared to the army stationed on the outer islands, the work in the Air Force there was indeed much easier. My regular duties mostly consisted of waiting for the day's assignments from my superiors. My most frequent job was assisting the maintenance officers and technical advisors with aviation equipment upkeep and runway patrols. However, the majority of my time was spent leading soldiers in miscellaneous chores and runway patrols. As a result, I often teamed up with the platoon leader or another officer, riding bicycles to patrol the airport runway and the various hangars. A single -person sentry post was set up next to each hangar. It was a freezing winter day, and the platoon leader told me to join him for a nighttime sentry inspection. At 2 o'clock in the morning, wrapped in military overcoats and fighting sleepiness in the biting cold wind, the two of us rode our bicycles to check the sentry posts at each hangar. First, we went to the sentry post at the first hangar in order. Everything was normal, with nothing unusual. Then we headed to the post at the second hangar. When we got there, we saw a newly assigned soldier sleeping. Seeing this, the platoon leader kicked the new soldier awake and said, "Having too easy of a time, aren't you? Believe it or not, I'll throw you in solitary confinement. Get serious. Guard this hangar carefully. Inside is a retired exhibition aircraft that was just transported here today, waiting to be shipped back to the main island. The commanding officer is coming tomorrow for a final inspection. If anything goes wrong, you'll be in deep trouble." The soldier mustered his absolute focus, standing completely straight in front of the sentry post, not daring to make a single movement. After reprimanded the soldier, we continued to the next sentry post. Once we finished checking all the posts, the platoon leader and I took our original route back. When we returned to the second hangar, we noticed the hangar door was slightly open, leaving a gap just wide enough for a person to enter, and light was spilling out from the inside. We stepped forward and found that the sentry post was unexpectedly empty. The platoon leader cursed as he peeked inside. "Son of a bitch. What did that guy run in there for? If I catch him slacking off, I will definitely throw him in solitary confinement." I then followed the platoon leader into the hangar. What greeted our eyes were for World War I American aid propeller fighter planes. The planes even had pilot drawings and English signatures on them. The power-stillated equipment on these remodeled fighters had already been removed, and they were just waiting to be repainted before being shipped back to the main island as exhibition aircraft. The platoon leader and I searched all over the massive hangar for the soldier. The platoon leader angrily shouted his name, cursing, "Where did you hide? Get out here." Only the platoon leader's echo resounded in the massive hangar, and there was no sign of the soldier. I immediately said to the platoon leader, "Platoon leader, I think I'd better go report to the company commander first." The platoon leader replied, "All right, go ahead, and call the master sergeant over while you're at it." Just then, right after we finished speaking, the cockpit of one of the 4 planes quietly parked inside slammed shut with a whoosh. I and the platoon leader were both startled. When we looked up, the engine of that plane suddenly let out a loud roar, billowing thick black smoke, and the propeller immediately started spinning. Seeing this, the platoon leader and I immediately wanted to run over to the fighter jet. However, because of the thick black smoke from the engine and the spinning propeller, the cloud of smoke obscured our vision, making it very difficult to get close enough to check if there was actually anyone inside. This commotion also caught the attention of people nearby. The company commander and the technical advisors came running, and the technical advisor frantically asked us what was happening. Just as we were explaining it to him, the plane suddenly went completely still. Right before the eyes of our entire group, the sliding canopy of the cockpit opened by itself with a swish, and the hangar returned to its original silence. The advisor and the company commander immediately stepped forward to inspect it. They confirmed that the engine of that fighter jet had already been removed. Only something resembling an exhaust system remained. Meanwhile, the master sergeant, who had heard the news and was hurrying over, found the soldier who was supposed to be standing guard in the hangar passed out in a grassy ditch outside. A few of us immediately pulled him up. After waking him, we asked what exactly had happened. The soldier, trembling slightly, said, "Just now, after the patrol inspection, I was standing at the hangar door when suddenly, the voices of several men speaking excitedly in English and running around came from inside. I immediately went into the hangar to check and saw several white shadows floating around, with shouting echoing from time to time. Because I don't understand English and didn't know what they were saying, I was terrified and wanted to run and report it to the patrol officer, but I wasn't paying attention, fell into the ditch outside the hangar, and passed out." After hearing his account, the officers and technical advisors present were completely baffled, stating they had never encountered a situation like this before. The soldier was later sent to the military hospital for an examination. We later found out that these planes were transported from a certain company's storage. No one actually knew the origins of the planes, the information about their pilots, or what battles they had participated in. This incident is just like the stories my friends encountered, where an engine height lest ank would move on its own and its gun barrel would turn by itself. Lastly, I want to say that war is cruel. I hope those brave fighter pilots can rest in peace. That happened during the summer vacation when I had graduated from high school and was preparing for college. A few years have passed, but I still cannot understand what exactly I saw back then. One afternoon, my parents both went out, leaving me home alone. I didn't have a shift at my part-time job that day, and I had made plans to grab dinner with friends in the evening. Originally, I was planning to just lie around and do nothing until it was time to leave, but the TV programs made me feel bored and restless, so I decided to go on a little adventure. Actually, I have a hobby that no one knows about: exploring abandoned ruins. I had already visited many of the ruins in my city at least once during high school. Around 2 p.m. that afternoon, I hopped on my scooter and left home. In the city where I lived, there was an abandoned building at the time. That building used to be a bustling shopping mall. It had its glorious days in the past and was once the trendiest entertainment venue. Later, due to a massive fire and the shifting of the city's commercial district, the crowds in that building gradually dwindled. Afterward, quite a few supernatural legends emerged from there, so people didn't dare to get close to it. The shops and entertainment venues closed down one by one, ultimately turning it into a charred ruin. Perhaps from what I've said so far, some people might have already guessed which building I'm talking about. Upon arriving, I secretly slipped into the interior of the building through a small path. The entire ruin was very quiet. The only sound was my footsteps crunching on loose stones and broken glass. I walked up the old staircase, passing by various deserted shops along the way, and saw garbage and debris scattered all over the ground. I could immediately tell what kind of places these used to be and could roughly envision their former prosperity and boom. Of course, the scars left by the ravaging fire were also visible. Just like that, I walked up to the 8th floor by myself. There were many abandoned sofas and jukeboxes there, as well as a large mirrored wall. Several shattered disco balls lay on the floor, and the walls were covered with posters of singers or celebrities from that era. I stood at the edge of the floor and could see through the broken walls and ruins to the opposite side of the building on the same floor. This building covered a massive area, feeling like several buildings fused together. In short, it was divided into east and west wings. At that moment, I was standing on this side, looking towards the west wing on the same floor. I had no idea what the same floor of the west wing was originally used for, because the staircase leading to the west wing was blocked by a large amount of bulky furniture. As a girl, I couldn't move it myself, so in the past, I would only look over toward the west wing from here. But that day, my curiosity got the better of me, and I wanted to find a way over there to explore. While I was looking for a way, I saw something bizarre. I looked into the interior of the west wing on the same floor and saw a shadow on all fours moving around. I just figured it was a stray dog and thought nothing of it. In urban exploration, it's very normal to encounter stray animals, so I just stared at it for a moment, and the shadow kept moving, and it was at this time I realized something. That shadow on all fours was a bit too tall compared to the size of a normal stray dog. The height of a dog usually falls around the knee, but compared to the clutter nearby, the shadow I saw then was estimated to reach my waist. Although it was very bizarre, at the time I just thought it was a large stray dog, or I had misjudged. After all, there was still a short distance between the east and west buildings, and the possibility of misjudging due to the distance existed, so I didn't mind it at all and continued looking for a way into the interior of the west building. But just a few seconds after I turned my head to look around and looked back, that dark shadow disappeared. Then I also found the way to the west side from the top floor, and I walked down that set of stairs. That was my first time walking into the west building, and I was both nervous and excited. Although many floors of the west building were completely empty, it was totally different from the east building. There wasn't even any trash. Many doors were locked with heavy padlocks, and there was no way to squeeze through the gaps. I felt very disappointed. I finally made it into the west side, only to find nothing at all. Afterward, I wandered to one of the floors. Although that floor was also reduced to ruins, the windows had been deliberately covered with plastic sheeting, so it was particularly dark. I could only vaguely see pitch dents on the ground that looked like trash and debris, and there were a lot of them. I walked towards the direction of the light source, and as I walked, my foot felt a sticky sensation. I stopped and looked down. At first, I didn't know what I had stepped on because I couldn't see clearly due to the lighting. My first instinct was to wonder if it was the excrement of a stray animal, so I reflexively lifted my foot and tried to scrape the dirt off on the adjacent floor, but as soon as I lifted my foot, I felt something was wrong. What I had stepped on was a very sticky, dark liquid. It felt like stepping on a glue trap. I felt disgusted, so I desperately tried to scrape this slime off. While scraping the sole of my shoe, I looked at a welcome, wine-lit area not far away. I realized that over there was the opposite building. Opposite was the 8th floor of the east side where I had just been. I realized that I had now arrived at the exact spot where I had just seen the shadow of the supposed stray dog. I felt a faint, inexplicable unease in my heart, and by this time my eyes had adapted slightly more to the dark environment. I looked at the floor to figure out what exactly I had stepped on, and as a result, I was startled out of my wits, because all around me were footprints. I turned my head to look at the floor along the way I came. Those black things I originally thought were trash were actually all dark footprints. Looking closely, the sheer number of them was so dense it made my skin crawl, covering this floor sickeningly. What terrified me even more was that, if they were just ordinary shoe prints, they could perhaps be considered left behind by other explorers, but those traces were entirely made up of barefoot prints and human handprints. In other words, there was actually a strange person, or something imitating a human, crawling around on that floor on all fours. At that moment, I was so scared I nearly crapped my pants. My heart was beating super fast. I was terrified that something in that form would suddenly appear before my eyes, so I quickly ran away, because the downward stairs of the west building had already been blocked off. I could only run frantically back the way I came to the top floor, and then go down from the east building to the first floor to leave. The details of my escape back then have become blurry, but the surging sense of fear while running is still fresh in my memory. Along the way, the dark shadow I had originally thought was a wild dog kept popping into my mind, and it gradually became clear, taking the shape of a monster or a bizarre human. Aside from these imagined images, I also constantly felt like something was chasing right behind me. It wasn't until I ran to the first floor and got on my scooter that I still didn't dare to look back. Once on the first floor, I immediately sped away from that building. That night, while having dinner with friends, I told them what had happened to me in the afternoon. My friends all advised me never to do this kind of thing alone again. It's very dangerous. Just then, a friend suddenly pointed at my backpack and asked me, "What did your backpack get stained with?" I looked at where he was pointing. On the inside of the backpack, there was a dark stain, looking just like that dark liquid I had stepped on in the ruins. I was shocked, because from the moment I entered the ruins, I had been carrying the backpack and hadn't taken it off once. The inside of the backpack had been tightly pressed against my back the whole time. When did that stain get on there? What was even more confusing was why the backpack got stained, but my clothes were completely clean. Afterward, my friends accompanied me to the night market to buy a new backpack, and then we disposed of the stained backpack by a river. To this day, whenever I recall this incident, I still don't understand what exactly I saw that day. Was it a homeless person secretly hiding in the ruins or a mentally unstable drug addict? Or was it something supernatural? Whenever I imagine the true face of that dark shadow crawling on the floor, a sense of fear always wells up spontaneously, making my scalp tingle. But no matter what I saw that day, that building no longer exists. I think that thing has probably disappeared along with the building too.